In this video, I'm going to share with you how we go about soundproofing this new build semi-detached property, including how much reduction in noise you can expect to achieve from your soundproofing investment and how much the whole thing costs if you were to have it all done for you. If you're a builder, DIYer or homeowner living in a new build semi-detached property, this is a great video for you. I speak to a lot of people with a new build semi-detached property and they're hearing everything from their neighbours. They're hearing TV, conversation, music, but they're also hearing a lot of impact noise from the neighbours, such as doors banging, kids running around next door, sliding wardrobe doors and drawers banging. And these noises are affecting their sleep, their health, and it's affecting the relationship with anyone around them. For some, they're hearing every aspect of their neighbour's daily life, and it's making them very aware of what they're doing in their own home. It's making them feel uncomfortable, unsettled, and feel like moving. And in this video, I'm going to share with you how we go about soundproofing a new build semi-detached property. And before all of you go commenting, oh, move to a detached property, 40% of our inquiries come from people with a detached property. And a lot of those are new build detached properties. Now you might be thinking, what sort of noises do you expect to get from a detached property? Just look at some of the comments on my other videos. There was a gentleman the other day that is in a new build detached property and they're still hearing their kids running around, boom, 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 in the alleyway between the two detached properties. They can actually feel the vibration of those kids running around in the alleyway between the two detached properties. Other noise problems are road traffic noise, whether that's the road outside or that distant motorway. It's very common in a new build property or even a property that's been renovated to hear that distant hum of a motorway. Other noises are aircraft noise, or even a kid next door kicking a ball against a fence, dogs barking. There are some homeowners in a detached property that still can't play their music or do their noisy hobby whenever they want. They're playing their music or their instrument and they're getting funny looks from their neighbours in the morning or even complaints from their neighbours. And forgive me, I only hear about the bad ones. I'm sure there are plenty of new build properties out there that just don't have a noise problem. But in this video, I'm going to share with you the latest methods that we've developed to reduce the noise in new build properties so homeowners can stay in the home they love. Let's get stuck into how we soundproof a new build. Now, depending on where you are in your soundproofing journey, you might still be thinking, I just need to put something on that separating party wall. I need to put one of these clips and channel systems on every room in my house that has a separating party wall. But unfortunately, it's not as simple as that. If it was the case, then yeah, I would be doing that all the time. And for those of you that are still looking for a clip and channel system to put on that separating party wall, let me help you out. A builder will charge you maybe about £1,500 to £2,000 to put a clip and channel system on that separating party wall, and most soundproofing companies will charge you £3,000 to £4,000 to put a clip and channel system on that separating party wall, and they go to the floor, to the ceiling, and they might even insulate part of the ceiling as well. However, when you soundproof a new build property, a lot of homeowners that I speak to, when you ask them to put their finger in their ear and ear on the window wall, that exterior window wall which is perpendicular to the party wall, a lot of them are finding the noise is actually louder on that window wall than it is the separating party wall. And also a lot of them are finding those stud walls perpendicular to the party wall. So you might have a bedroom on the party wall and you might have a ensuite in that room, and that stud wall might be creating that ensuite that you have in your main bedroom. There could be another stud wall perpendicular that might create that cupboard under the stairs like we have here, or there might be just that separating wall between the lounge and the kitchen. Either way, look at all of those stud walls perpendicular to the separating party wall, put your finger in your ear and listen on that wall next time your neighbours are playing that music, or that dog is barking, or those kids are running around. How much noise do you hear on those walls perpendicular? For those of you that might have paused the video right now and listened on those flanking areas, that window wall or maybe that stud wall perpendicular, we call them flanking areas, and you've heard your neighbours, let us know what you've heard in the comments down below, because it would be really helpful for other people to know what you might have heard. Now, for some, the noise might be slight by that for the width for the window wall, but you're still thinking, yeah, it's still louder on that separating party wall. You can almost visualize where they are in their room through the separating party wall. I get that, but you're not going to achieve that significant reduction in noise until you treat all of those noise paths. So if you're hearing the noise slight on that window wall or on that stud wall perpendicular, that is noise transmitting through the structure, and that noise is radiating out into the room. So you can expect little to maybe 30-40% reduction in noise if you just try and put something on that direct noise path of the party wall and not treat those other flanking areas. To soundproof a new build property, we find that the best solution is to do one room really well first of all. Maybe choose a room on that ground floor first, soundproof that entirely and do it really well, and get an idea of what sort of reduction in noise you can expect to achieve. Then maybe treat that bedroom upstairs. It's just not feasible to soundproof the whole of your new build property. There are just too many indirect noise paths to treat. If you say a window wall would cost £4,000 to £5,000 to install a soundproofing solution to maybe remove the dot and dab plasterboard, sound deaden those lightweight thermalite blocks, install a soundproofing solution, complete plaster finish, refit skirting, refit carpet, refit electrical, complete paint and decorating, that's going to add up per wall. Yeah, so £3,000 to £4,000 for that wall, £3,000 to £4,000 for that wall, £3,000 to £4,000 for that, and the ceiling. Wait to the end of the video and you get to the other stuff to really get that significant reduction in noise, but you get the idea. It's just not feasible to do every room in your house, especially if you've done that ear on the wall test and you're hearing it on every wall in your house when that dog is barking. Now, to get a significant reduction in noise, you need to follow a methodology, and we have a 4-step soundproofing method that I'm going to walk you through now for your new build property. Now, the first step is the main cause. It means it doesn't matter what soundproofing you do, doesn't matter how singing and dancing the clip or channel system is, and doesn't matter if you put it on every wall in your house, unless you address the main cause, the noise will still come through. And your main cause is dot and dab plasterboard, which is on every wall that has a concrete block wall. So every wall in your house that has a concrete block is normally a dot and dab plasterboard technique applied to that gives you that nice painted plastered wall that you have everywhere. This is a dot and dab plasterboard wall, and how can you tell it's dot and dab plasterboard? So here I'm tapping, that's a hollow sound. Okay, as I move along, it's solid. That's a solid sound. So with a dot and dab plasterboard wall, we have sections which are hollow, sections which are solid. So here, solid, hollow, solid, hollow. And that will give you an idea that it's a dot and dab plasterboard wall. Where the solid sections are, that's the dollops of adhesive. Where the hollows are, that's the hollow void behind the plasterboard where the sound resonates. Now that dot and dab plasterboard technique creates lots of cavities, creates that drum effect and amplifies the noise. I'm not going to go into detail in the dot and dab and the alternatives to dot and dab and all of that now in this video, but just know that if you don't remove that dot and dab, then the noise will still come through. Any hollow stud wall that you have perpendicular to the separating party wall, that's also going to amplify the noise from the structure. Now those stud walls don't necessarily need to be in that room that you're trying to soundproof. You might have one at the top of the stairs, you might have one in another room, you might have one immediately over the ceiling. Those hollow stud walls again are amplifying the noise from the structure and then just shooting that noise back down into the room that you're trying to soundproof. And that again is why they are a main cause of the noise. And then we have that hollow ceiling void above your head. Now you think your neighbours have that big hollow ceiling void in their lounge, diner, whatever, they have the other side of the separating party wall. They also have the noise of their bedroom noise coming into that ceiling as well. And that noise is just resonating in that ceiling. It's a big amplifier and it's just shooting into your house. Which is why if you don't insulate that ceiling, you don't take the time to insulate that ceiling, the noise will still come through. And here's just a little insight for you. To install rock wool to these ceilings, here in the UK, these ceilings are now about a 300mm gap. So that's 300mm of rock wool that's required in that ceiling void. And they're engineered joists. It takes about 2 or 3 days to insulate that ceiling with that rock wool. Moulding the rock wool around all of those pipes and around all of those electrical cables before the Sparkies start commenting about putting insulation around their electrical cables. So yeah, it takes a lot of time to insulate those ceilings, and if they're not done, the noise will still come through. So let's look at the direct noise path. This is the separating party wall, and this is what everybody's trying to sell you, is a solution to that direct noise path. And without a doubt, for impact noise, you need a floating frame. For low frequency bass noise, dog barking, clonks and clangs, all those types of noises, you need a floating frame which is 175mm thick, because you need to sound dampen the wall with a 20mm rubber, you need a 25mm air gap, and then you need a floating frame which is made from the 3B2, and then whatever you can afford to put on that floating frame, depending on your noise problem, your skill level, your space loss and your load bearing, will determine the thickness of the system. But really you're looking at 175mm space loss to that separating party wall. Now a lot of you will have dot and dab plasterboard on that wall, so removing that will give you another 25 to 30mm space, so you're probably looking about 150mm in total is the space loss to your separating party wall. If you've got impact noise, doors banging, dogs barking, clonking and clanging next door, low frequency bass noise, that is the thickness of the system that's required to that separating party wall. And the key aspect of treating the direct noise path is to tuck it up and tuck it down. You just need to understand that that area above the ceiling is still the direct noise path of the party wall, and that is one of the weakest parts and the part of your property that is getting absolutely blasted by sound from the neighbours, and that is so important to cut open the ceiling and tuck the system up. And it's about 80% of the work is to cut open the ceiling, tuck the system up, tuck it around those joists, move joists if we have to. It is a lot of work to do that, but it is a key part of the solution. Now, if you are still at that stage and you just want to put something on that separating party wall, check out the 7 ways to soundproof a wall video. I go into a lot of detail on different wall systems that you can put on that separating party wall to get a significant reduction in noise through that direct noise path. Okay, for those of you that are still with me, to soundproof a new build property, the direct noise path of, say, the separating party wall on a semi-detached property is a tiny part of your soundproofing installation, especially if you have music, dogs barking, impact noises coming from next door. It is a small part of your soundproofing solution. And when you see the costs and work involved to treat these indirect noise paths, this will give you an idea of whether you are moving or soundproofing. All right, let's get stuck into indirect noise paths. Now, the first indirect noise path that we want to look at on a new build property is the window wall. That's the wall that I asked you to put your finger in the ear and ear on the wall. What do you hear down that window wall? Make sure you check the area right close to the separating party wall, but also check that area the other side of the window, that area furthest away from the separating party wall, and gauge how much noise you hear down the whole thing. You'll find that it's very loud by the separating party wall, and it gets less and less the further away you get from the separating party wall. Now, that window wall is most likely constructed with dot and dab plasterboard, which is fixed to aerated blocks if you're here in the UK. Now, these aerated blocks, they're like Celcons or thermalite blocks, and they use these blocks to meet the thermal value of the property, and that they're the reason you're hearing so much down this window wall, because the noise transmits so easily through them. And we found that the only way to reduce that noise transmitting through these aerated blocks is to sound dampen them, is to put a 20mm rubber to these thermalite blocks. Now, what you glue to this rubber, this 20mm rubber that you've applied to these thermalite blocks, what you apply to this rubber next will be determined by the severity of your noise problem, your budget, and your space that you have available. Now, what we like to do is install a honeycomb sandboard product and then a 15mm sound block board, and we use 2 different types of adhesive. The adhesive creates that resilient layer, which is why we get 80% reduction on the flanking noise transmission down these walls. We always return the system into the window, so we're putting the system onto the window reveals, onto the header, and we're returning it into the window frame, improving the thermal and acoustic qualities of that window. And if you're looking at the window reveal right now and thinking, I don't think that's going to fit, I don't have 50mm 2 inches on that window reveal, well, we show you exactly how to do that in the noise-free DIY soundproofing course. I've not had a case where it doesn't fit. Now, what about those stud walls? maybe you're not hearing it on the window wall, but you are hearing it on that stud wall, which is right by the separating party wall, that wall that creates that cupboard under the stairs, or that wall perpendicular at the top of the stairs, for example. What if you're hearing it on there? Well, you simply need to open that up, i.e. remove the plasterboard, which will expose a timber stud or even a metal stud, and you need to insulate with a rock wool. And what we like to use is an RW3 rock wool, and depending on how bad the noise is, if it's just slight, insulate it with a rock wool and then put a acoustic 15mm soundblock board back over the top. If the noise is really bad, like it's louder on that stud wall than it is the separating party wall, like it is for a lot of people, then consider removing the plasterboard, insulating the frame that you have there at the moment, install resilient bars and 2 layers of 15mm acoustic plasterboard. And make sure you follow all the usual rules of 4mm gap, isolation all the way around when you're using resilient bars. Now, if you're looking at that wall perpendicular, that flanking wall, and thinking, oh, there's a door frame on there, how's that going to work with the frame? Well, we show you how to extend the door lining on the noise-free DIY soundproofing course. It's quite straightforward when you know how, but basically you're extending that door frame in a way that fits the new wall system and doesn't compromise the new soundproofing that you're putting on that wall. Now, if you're looking at those flanking areas that you've just put your ear on, you can hear that music, that dog barking down that wall, that flanking wall, and you're thinking, oh, there's a radiator on that wall, there's a windowsill, there's a door lining, there's wall lights. I don't know if I should do that wall. Try and think, the music, impact noise, all those noises you're hearing from the neighbours, that noise is in the structure of the building. It's transmitting through those ceiling joists, it's transmitting through those aerated blocks, it's transmitting through the structure more easily than me and you talking in the garden. As it's transmitting through the structure, techniques like dot and dab plasterboard, creating that drum effect, are amplifying the noise and it's radiating into the room. So what we're trying to do to get a significant reduction in noise here is try to treat soundproof, install sound insulation to as many of these hollow voids, these areas where the noise is loudest, and the more of these hollow voids and areas where the sound is transmitting through more easily, the more of these we can sound dampen, apply sound insulation to, the more reduction in noise you'll get. So now we're going to look at those areas that everybody misses when they try to soundproof their home. Why has my soundproofing not worked? Why do I still hear my neighbours? I can still hear the hum of the TV. This is the part of the video where you find out whether you're soundproofing or moving. Take this lounge that we've soundproofed. We've removed the dot and dab plasterboard, we've sound deadened the walls, we've installed a floating frame, the window wall's been treated, the stud wall's been treated, even the cupboard under the stairs has been treated. Now, if we left it like this, the homeowner would still pretty much hear everything they heard before. The noise would be slightly reduced, maybe a 40-50% reduction in noise, but they would still hear everything they did before. They would still hear that music, screaming, doors closing, that impact noise coming through from next door. And it only takes that slight bit of noise to come through to feel stressed and annoyed with the noise, for it to disturb your evening, affect the relationship with anyone around you, feel uncomfortable and feel like moving. So here it is. Are you soundproofing or are you moving? Those aerated concrete blocks, those hollow stud walls, that dot and dab plasterboard technique, they are all in the rooms above, and they're in the rooms adjacent to the one that you're trying to soundproof, and they all need treating in order to reduce the noise getting into that room that you're trying to soundproof. When the neighbours play music, they have a gathering of people, that dog is barking, they're making a lot of noise next door. When that noise reaches a certain volume, or certain decibel we should say, it enters the structure. When it enters the structure of the building, it transmits through the structure more easily than it does me and you talking in the garden. So noise is in the structure, right? And that dot and dab plasterboard that you have in that room above or that room adjacent, that is amplifying the noise from the structure. It's amplifying the noise from those aerated blocks. Because that dot and dab plasterboard technique, or that hollow stud wall or that hollow ceiling, it creates that hollow void. Noise is channeling through that hollow void just like any wind instrument, and it's channeling the noise back into that room that you're trying to soundproof. So even though the neighbours are downstairs making noise, the other side of this lounge separating party wall, they're the other side of the wall, the noise is entering the structure, it's amplified by that dot and dab plasterboard in the room upstairs and shooting back down into that room that you're trying to soundproof. Understanding that concept is the key to soundproofing new build properties. Once you understand that concept, you won't waste your money on soundproofing just the party wall in every room of your house. This property, the adjacent wall was the stairs wall. You had the sound resonating in each one of those stair treads. You had the sound resonating in the hollow plasterboard. As it resonates in the hollow void, it creates that drum effect. It amplifies the noise and shoots it back into that room that we're trying to soundproof. So it doesn't matter where the neighbours are in their property making noise, the noise would come through and it would just be channeled into that room that we're trying to soundproof. So the neighbours could be at the front of the property, they could be coming and going from the front door, and the noise would just channel all the way along that stairwell wall into the lounge and towards the back of the house. And that's the same for the upstairs rooms. Once you've put that barrier on the direct noise path of the party wall and the lounge, you're still going to hear everything because the noise is resonating, creating that drum effect in the upstairs hollow voids and then just shooting down into the room that you're trying to soundproof. Now maybe watch those last few minutes back again because it can be quite confusing. But basically we needed to gut the stairs and all of those rooms that were connected to this ground floor lounge diner in order to reduce the noise getting into that lounge diner. Now, once you've done all of that, you need to consider the fixtures and fittings. Now, fixtures and fittings is one of the biggest modules in the noise-free DIY soundproofing course because there's so many to go through. So I'm not going to be able to have time to go through all of them in this video, but I'm just going to take one of the key parts for soundproofing a new build property, because you probably realize now it's a bit more than putting on the separating party wall alone. So if you've installed highly reflective acoustic sound block board, which is the finishing layer for you to plaster, it's still very reflective for sound, and you've installed that to the separating party wall, the ceiling as a minimum, but you've also treated the window wall and the other walls perpendicular. You've created a lot of highly reflective hard surfaces in that room. So if you were then to install wooden floors or some sort of hard wood finish flooring or hard tile flooring to that new room, then you've just made the noise worse because the sound is then bouncing around off of all the hard surfaces. I would strongly recommend installing something like carpet or something that's going to reduce the sound energy bouncing around in the room. Otherwise, you're looking at having a lot of cushions, a lot of soft sofas, and maybe even considering sound absorption pictures and whatnot on the walls to reduce the sound bouncing around in that new room. That's just one example of how important fixtures and fittings are as part of the 4-step soundproofing method. But we also install the electrical back in a way that doesn't compromise the system. We don't cut a great big hole in the system. You've got to make sure the same materials that you install to the wall systems go behind the electrical sockets. Consider no downlighters, so single light pendants, because rather having a hole that goes into the ceiling everywhere, those light fittings, those downlighters, they don't offer any sound attenuation. Skirting, architrave door linings, make sure they're all fitted back in a way that doesn't compromise the new soundproofing. Fitted wardrobes, make sure they don't have a backing to them. Lose the coving, go for nice tight corners because the coving will channel the noise all the way around the room. Basically, we're putting fixtures and fittings back in place which doesn't compromise the new soundproofing, and you're putting fixtures and fittings back that doesn't amplify the noise. We already know you've got a noise problem. You've done all this work to reduce the noise. You then don't want to compromise it by putting something back that amplifies noise, such as a hardwood finished floor or coving. So what sort of reduction in noise can you expect to achieve from this amount of sound insulation installed to your new build property? If you treated all of the noise paths in the lounge, you've done that stairs, that landing, that bedroom like we've done in this example, you can expect an 80% reduction on airborne noise and a 65% reduction on impact noise. So that means impact noise that's still coming through will sound a lot more distant. Those kids running around, those clonks and clangs, those doors banging will certainly sound a lot more distant. So if you're sat in the silence reading, for example, those clonks and clangs will sound a lot more distant. You wouldn't be sure whether that is outside or not. It's certainly not going to disturb your evening. It won't startle you so much. And if you've got something on in the background, you're unlikely to hear those noises. So it can be transformational for a lot of people. But as I said earlier, it's not feasible to soundproof your whole house, and for many you don't need to. I've certainly not soundproofed the whole of my house. You'll just find that doing one room really well, and maybe the main bedroom for example, can be enough for a lot of people to make them feel settled, comfortable in their home, feeling like they don't ever want to move. So how much does it cost? Well, this amount of sound insulation installed to, say, the lounge diner downstairs and a couple of rooms upstairs and stairs, for example, complete plaster finish, refitting all the fixtures and fittings, all the painting and decorating, carpet refitting, everything is all done for you, then it will be in the region of about £35,000. Obviously, if you're a DIYer, it will be a fraction of that cost if you were to do it yourself. So if you're a DIYer or builder and you have a noise problem in a new build property, why not consider the noise-free DIY soundproofing course? It's filmed in hundreds of properties, showing you step by step how to soundproof your property. The course, you have it for life, you can do it at your own pace, and it will save you thousands of pounds and save you having to do it 3 times like I did for my own property. So yeah, if you're interested in that, the link is in the description down below. And one final insight, guys, because I speak to thousands of homeowners all the time, I find that a lot of people that have moved into a new build property, they feel that their neighbours they've moved next to don't know how to close doors properly. They think that the neighbours they've moved next door to stomp around all the time because they don't know how to walk properly, and they shout at one another all the time. Well, maybe it's the hollow voids in your property, those hollow stud walls, the dot and dab plasterboard, the aerated blocks that cove in those downlighters. All those construction techniques are amplifying the noise from your neighbours, and your neighbours are just living their lives as normal, and your property is amplifying their noise. Or maybe you do live next to very noisy neighbours. I hope you find this video useful. I'll see you on the next video.